Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about social media and how it can affect us, not always in a positive way. I want to start by saying that I love social media, and I think it's a really great tool to interact with other people because we can meet people from all over the world, get our ideas out there, start movements together, but sometimes it's not always that great. Social media can be isolating. It can make us feel like we're alone and affect the way we see ourselves. It can also affect the way we communicate with each other and how often we're willing to interact in person. I think it's a great tool when used in moderation, but there has recently been a lot more questions surrounding social media and whether or not it can cause or worsen mental illness. First, I want to explain how I use social media. I use all kinds of social media every single day. You could say I'm addicted, but I think most of us are. I mostly use Snapchat, Twitter, and YouTube, but I also use Instagram to post pictures every once in a while. I mainly use social media to interact with friends and just for entertainment, but I get news from Twitter and Snapchat as well. I love social media because it's easy and it's fun. I honestly waste a lot of time on there. But while I was thinking about how I use social media, I started realizing that it kind of brings me down a lot of the times. For example, I don't really like getting on Instagram because I start to compare myself to others a lot, and I think that's a toxic thing for me to do. So I only get on it to post some pictures of me occasionally, and that's about it. I also realized how often I use social media to talk to my friends. Like, I have friends from my hometown that I only talk to on Twitter and Snapchat. We don't even text anymore. I think it's just an easy way to still be connected with someone but not have full-on conversations. And it turns out a lot of us use social media to stay in contact with our friends in an easy and, honestly, a lazy way. I want to talk about an article that I read posted by Psychology Today titled "The Psychology Behind Social Media Interactions." And the article talks about how communicating over social media has become the preferred method of interacting with each other. And this can explain why so many teens and young adults find it uncomfortable having conversations on the phone and in person. It brings up how interacting through social media is so much easier than communicating in person. And when we're interacting in person, we're putting in a lot more emotional and cognitive effort than whenever we're talking to people online. This is why it can feel so much easier to talk to someone online. The article says that, quote, day-to-day interactions are based almost entirely on nonverbal communication, end quote. So our brains are constantly taking in facial expressions, body language, eye contact, hand gestures, all of those things while we're just having a simple conversation. All of this nonverbal communication is lost whenever we're talking to people online, and this is why it can be so much easier to hide our emotions and put on a mask for followers online. We can even create a version of ourselves that is entirely made up, and no one will know how we're actually feeling. Since interacting online requires little effort and more of us are using it, this can affect how we interact with people in person. So I found another article on theknowledgeofyou.com that's titled "Effects of Social Media on Communication Skills." And it has some really great points on how so many of us would rather talk online than in person, and that people are probably more likely to talk to friends and family over social media than they are face to face. This can cause us to feel uncomfortable when we receive a phone call or have to show up at someone's house. I know I use multiple social media sites to talk to my family, and I've definitely gotten a little bit anxious whenever a relative I don't see very often calls me. And this is because we're so used to talking online and having time to think out exactly what we're gonna say, and now talking to someone in real life or over the phone can just be stressful. And we also kind of lose our grammatical skills whenever we become so used to communicating on social media because everything is very fast and we don't really care about perfect English. So we've come up with shortened versions of phrases like LOL, IDK, IDC, and we're so used to saying these phrases that sometimes we'll work slang terms into our real life conversations and maybe even into our academic and business papers and emails. But the way we communicate because of social media isn't the only reason it can be bad for us. It can also actually make us just feel sad. An article on childmind.org titled "Does Social Media Cause Depression?" brings up a lot of issues and concerns around whether social media can cause depression in teens and young adults. They bring up some studies that show people who spend the most time online have higher rates of depression than those who spend the least time online. They also pointed out that a study done in 2017 states that, quote, over 500,000 8th through 12th graders found that the number exhibiting high levels of depressive symptoms increased by 33% between 2010 and 2015. In the same period, the suicide rates for girls in that age group increased by 65%, end quote. Now, This isn't a definitive study that states that social media is causing depression. It's just a correlation between social media and depression. It's not a causation, but it's worth looking into because these are alarming statistics. The question the article is asking is, what could be causing depression on social media? Is it because we're actually spending less time with others because we're spending more time online? Or is it because social media can make us feel more alone than we actually are? I don't think it's because we're literally spending more time online and less time with others. It might be, but I think the fact that it's so easy for people to feel left out due to social media is a big, big part of it. This happens to all of us at some point, like when friends are posting pictures together, but we didn't get the invite, or when one person is always posting about their happy relationship, or their amazing adventures around the world, or their 200 friends. This happens to me a lot, I know, whenever I see pictures about traveling. I feel like I'm not doing anything with my life whenever I see pictures and videos of people going all over the world, even though I am, and I have traveled, and I have been places. I mean, I've literally caught myself wishing I could have this amazing experience one girl posted in a video on Twitter of her traveling around Europe, until I realized that I've literally been to Europe. That girl was me. I've been there. So why do I still feel like I missed out? We can often forget that while those things are great and probably a lot of fun for those people, it's not always like that. It's not going to always be so perfect, and they're only showing us the best versions online. A friendship or a relationship can be horrible behind a computer screen, but if all we see are these perfectly photoshopped happy images, we have no way to see what's actually happening. The youth can easily think that they must look or act a certain way to be happy, but what really matters is our real life interactions, not what we post online. I think social media is a great way to make friends and share our memories, but I also think it's really easy for people to create a negative image of themselves just based on the images others post online. Overall, I think social media can be a great tool to talk to people and post your best memories out there and share with people that you don't really see all the time, but I think it's a slippery slope and it can be easily taken too far. It really depends on how you use it and if you're giving yourself the right number of breaks in between, because sometimes we don't really realize it, but it can be damaging to our self-worth and mental health. In my opinion, no one should be communicating on social media more than they are in real life, because we're human beings, and human interaction is critical to our mental and physical health. I think we all need to remember that even if we don't look like someone on Instagram, we still have our own beautiful traits, and even if something isn't shared online, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. We all have our own memories, and even if not everyone is aware about them, it shouldn't matter. So, in conclusion, stop listening to this podcast and go start a conversation with someone in real life. It'll do you good. Thank you for listening.